A Black American woman who moved from the United States to Russia to escape discrimination and racism faces discrimination and racism again in Russia. This Black American woman, who goes by the name of Francine Villa, was brutally attacked by her neighbors who are white and Russian. Please subscribe, share, and comment. Thank you. From the information I gathered, the victim of this racist and savage attack in Russia, Francine Villa, was actually born in Russia, and she is the great-granddaughter of a Black American man from Virginia, George Tyne, who moved to Russia in 1930s to work as an agriculturalist and then married a white Russian woman. Francine Villa, with her mother, moved to the United States when she was a child and spent most of her life in the U.S.A. Most of her family members still live in Russia though. According to Francine Villa herself, in a documentary aired on the Russian TV 5 years ago, she moved back to Russia because of a brutal encounter she had with the police in the U.S.A. She said she called the police for help, but the police ended up pinning her to the ground. I think many of you already saw Francine Villa's video that went viral on the social media. This video of her being beaten by her neighbors contains distressing images. Warning.
Сегодня напал мне прям кулаком, сребет тут прям кулаком в лицо. Женщина, прям напал меня, я тебя уничтожу, черно-желтый.
Значит, вы в России давно живете?
А у вас прописка есть здесь? Прописка?
Дай мне войти в мою квартиру.
Прописка есть?
Дай мне.
Почему вы ко мне на «ты»?
Я не могу выйти и входить в свою квартиру. Напугает моего ребенка.
Кого? Он пуганный, плачет, бедняжечка. Да, зайка, ты плачешь, да? Плачешь, зайка?
I feel sorry for this Black American woman who left the United States to escape discrimination and racism but still faces racism in Russia. Her neighbors, who happen to be white Russians and apparently a married couple, savagely beat her and her child. None of us knows exactly what led to the beating of this Black American woman and her child. No matter what this Black American woman did or what led to the altercation, she doesn't deserve such savage beating at all at the hands of her neighbors. The fact that we don't know what led to the beating of this poor woman and her child doesn't negate the existence of anti-black racism among Russians or racism in Russia. I'm not saying all Russians are anti-black racist, but a large number of Russians, especially in the big cities, are anti-black racist and bigot. I said this based on my personal experience while visiting Russia not long ago, and also based on a story a Russian woman told us in the classroom about her biracial daughter's experience with racism in Europe and Russia. By the way, I noticed anti-black racism from many Chinese also when I visited China. I find strange the fact that some individuals on the social media have already started to blame this poor Black American woman for what happened to her and her child. The reaction of these individuals is what prompts me to post this video. I could understand if white people were blaming her, but hearing some black individuals saying she got what she were looking for is what angered me. Because, saying things like that not only makes others or non-black people feel at ease in their barbarism, but it also encourages other people to continue being savage towards black people. Another weird thing I heard from these individuals on the social media is that they were trying to paint Francine Villa's brutal encounter with the police as her having multiple problems with the police in the United States. To say the least, it is very dishonest and demonic of them for saying such thing. I personally don't know Francine Villa, but I won't never imagine that her brutal encounter with the police in the United States made her a criminal, as black people are falsely and constantly portrayed as criminals. First, I'm black, and I do know what anti-black racism is or looks like. Second, I have been to Russia and I do know something about Russians' attitude towards black people. There, I traveled outside Moscow to a village or rural area, so I can say for sure I know a bit about Russians from all categories, especially their attitude towards black people. In addition, I still remember what my professor of mathematics at university, who was white and Russian, told us about her biracial daughter whom two white Russian girls insulted or mistreated. This professor married a black African who was also a professor at the same university. I will come back to her story later. A friend of mine, who took Russian classes and is very fluent in it, and I traveled to Russian for 3 weeks vacation. While staying in Moscow, my friend and I met a white Russian taxi driver who accepted to take us to a rural area or a small village about 40 kilometers outside Moscow. There, my friend and I noticed that the attitude of Russians in this village was friendlier than many Russians we encountered in Moscow. These Russians in the village were very welcoming, surprised to see that my friend speaks Russian, and they were curious to know a bit about our culture. They don't seem like our God-giving skin color bothers them, contrary to white Europeans and Americans. Indeed, a married couple in this village even offered us a room to spend the night there in order to explore more about their village. We had to ask our taxi driver to come back the next day to pick us to Moscow. This is to say that Russians who live in Moscow and other Russian cities, who had contact with white Europeans and Americans, or who had traveled to Europe and the United States, seem to have internalized a bit of Westerners' anti-black racism or hatred towards black people. As far as my Russian professor of mathematics is concerned, she and her black African husband have 3 biracial children. Their oldest daughter was lucky to get a scholarship that allowed her to study engineering in Germany. I still remember vividly what this Russian professor told us one day in the classroom about her oldest daughter. She said that her daughter was on the train back to her place in Frankfurt in the summer when 2 white girls her age, in front of her, and probably Russians, were talking in Russian by referring to her daughter as a monkey. Without knowing her daughter also speak Russian, these 2 girls used all kinds of derogatory language towards her daughter and even said it would be great if they could find a stick to beat this monkey and kick it out. She said her daughter stayed calm until the train stopped before she said to these 2 girls, in Russian, "I heard all the racist things you were saying about me." Then, the 2 girls tried to apologize to her daughter, but her daughter told them to go to hell. So, this is the fact about Russians. Most of Russians who have never traveled to Europe, the United States, or have never come in contact with Westerners are not racist towards black people. However, most of Russians who live in Europe, the United States, or have come in contact with Westerners internalize anti-black racism and display it openly. I hope my take on what happened to this poor black American woman and her child help you understand a bit about some Russians. No matter what this black American woman did, she doesn't deserve such savage beating or mistreatment at the hands of her white Russian neighbors. This man, who joined her wife to fist fight and beat this defenseless black woman and her child, is coward. Again, no matter what this black woman did or said, his savage beating of her alone is wrong and senseless. This man is not really a man next to his wife, he is a coward, and this is how cowardice manifests itself. If we cannot call the savage beating of this defenseless black woman and her child a racist act and cowardice, what else can we call it? I think Russians, as well as Chinese, should have serious discussions among themselves regarding racism and bigotry some segments of their societies harbor towards black people, if Russia and China want a strategic or economic partnership with Africa countries. As far as Europeans are concerned, I doubt any black person will bother ask Europeans and Americans to stop being anti-black racist, because they have been such since the dawn of time.
Значит, вы в России давно живете?
А у вас прописка есть здесь? Прописка?
Дай мне войти в мою квартиру.
Прописка есть?
Дай мне...
Почему вы ко мне на «ты»?
Я не могу выйти и входить в свою квартиру. Напугает моего ребенка.
Кого? Он пуганный плачет, бедняжечка, да, зайка? Ты плачешь, да? Плачешь, зайка?